I'm supposed to be on it for work, and sometimes I just hate it and I don't want to go on it at all.
I've got kids, I'm petrified for them, but we don't want to be the kind of parents looking over their shoulder every 5 minutes saying, who are you talking to?
I see it particularly with the metaverse, with virtual reality. And I'm going to say some things that you're not going to want to hear, but they are the truth.
99% of that wasn't anonymous. The majority of the abuse was actually from the UK.
And I was losing like 50,000 followers a day per day.
Losing 50,000 followers a day.
Lie.
This discussion today is about our online safety bill, which has been introduced to Parliament and will receive its second reading very soon. And I've invited you all here today because you all have experiences about bullying and trolling and racism and all of the unpleasant stuff which happens online. You know, we know that the internet is a force for good, but we know also it's a bit of a wild west as well, particularly for children and young people. When I arrived in the department 6 months ago, my job 6 months ago, this bill has been 5 years in the making. It wasn't in the place where I could take it to Westminster or where I felt that I could put that bill on dispatch box and say with my hand on my heart, this bill protects children, because it didn't. But it does now. And for me, that is the most important fundamental principle of this bill, that it protects children and the vulnerable and protects freedoms of speech. And I just want to say, I'm the Secretary of State for a Conservative government, but I've also got here my colleague, Rosie Duffield. And actually there are common causes which we work together on for the good. And Rosie also has her own experiences online. Would you like to say a few words?
Thanks very much, Nadine. You may have heard my name associated with some pretty horrible things online. And once you get labelled, particularly as a politician, it's really hard to shake off those labels. So people are told that you believe a certain thing or that you're phobic about something or some group of people, and it really isn't true. But shaking that off is really difficult, and you get all kinds of abuse because of that, because of other things. But what we've got in common as women in Parliament is mostly we'll say something and, you know, a male colleague will say pretty much the same thing, and we get abused about it in a completely different way. It's really true that we work cross-party, because just being women in Parliament is still a kind of strange phenomenon. So we don't all hate each other across the House at all. We work together. We experience the same kind of trolling and abuse. A lot of the abuse that the Conservative Party gets, also Labour MPs get from some of the same people in our party, which is really horrible, and I'm ashamed of that, but it does happen. So, but mostly we're here to hear from you guys, and we're hearing from young people who, you know, we didn't have to grow up in an atmosphere where everything we did was online. Everything was out there for everyone to see, and I can't imagine what that's like. So I'm here to listen, really, along with the Culture Secretary. So thanks very much for having me.
So I'm 19 at the moment, I'm still in uni, so a lot of these things are still very fresh to me, do you know what I mean? I'm still experiencing all of this every single day. Like, with me, I haven't really grown up in a time where there wasn't social media, so this is all I know. So one of the biggest things that we do at the Diana Award, we say that back in the day, if you was bullied, you was able to go home and almost like switch it off. Yeah. But everyone in this room knows, once you are harassed online, it's never ending. And the fact that you feel that it's never ending, it makes everything 10 times worse. You get what I mean? You can't switch it off, because even if you do switch it off, in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, people are still trolling me online.
Yeah. Okulaja, can you give us an example of something that you've experienced online that's had an impact on you?
So my Voice UK audition was last year, yeah? That came on TV, so doing The Voice wasn't something I always wanted to do, if that makes sense. But when the opportunity came about, I was like, cool. The internet at that time was in pieces. This is right after the George Floyd situation, and obviously we had loads more situations in the pandemic. So I was like, if I'm gonna go on this show, I'm gonna speak about things that I care about. So basically I did a performance, and everything I wanted by Billie Eilish, and what I did is I took some fragments of Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, and I incorporated that into my performance. So obviously I expected some people to say certain things about it, do you know what I mean? But I didn't expect it to be that level. The usual stuff. So yeah, and then it kind of just spiraled. Every performance, the hate got worse, if that makes sense.
So Alex, did you take him under your wing?
Yeah, I think Okulaja's experience is very similar to lots of young people across the UK. And I think we know that when it comes to any type of bullying, whatever your age, it can be really detrimental to you. But particularly with online bullying, it's public, it's pernicious, it's pervasive, and it can feel really hard to escape that. And we know that it also affects particular groups, those with protected characteristics. And so girls, women, those from a particular race or ethnic minority are far more likely to be targeted by abuse. I think these companies are really, really good at innovating their products and their tools. You see new options and experiences on their platforms all the time, but they're not so good at innovating when it comes to safeguarding. So we really want to see this bill make that difference, and I'm grateful for everyone being here today and sharing their experience.
Thanks, Alex. I can just see Pete's joined us on the line. Do you want to tell us about why the bill is important to you and what you've been doing and what your experiences are?
When I was a kid, the bullying that happened to me was face to face, and it was horrific. It was a lot of bullying in Australia because where we were, there were no ethnic families there. So all Greeks and Italians, I mean, if they saw anyone that stood out, it was pretty bad. And in those early days, it wasn't very multicultural. So we experienced it face to face as opposed to online. We didn't know anything about that. And that was horrific enough in itself. The problem is that now, when someone's hiding behind a computer and they're saying the things that they're saying, and they're giving you the insecurities that they're giving you, the difference is because you can't see their face, you create an even bigger image of this person. And it really is daunting. I've had some horrible experiences on Twitter where I mean, trolling, which I didn't even know what it was called at the time. And the thing is, we got to think, if I'm an adult, I'm 49 years old, and I've suffered from trolling online when, you know, in the last, thankfully not so much in the last few years, but I've had it quite a bit. Imagine what kids feel like. Imagine how they feel when they don't even get to see the person that's saying it to them. They can't see the expression. They can't defend themselves in any way. There's just an image created online. It really is important that we do something about it. I've got kids. I'm petrified for them, but we don't want to be the kind of parents looking over their shoulder every 5 minutes saying, who are you talking to? What are you doing? What is this person saying? So it's just a matter of us being the parents and caring, but also having the support from you guys to be able to help alleviate the problems or definitely minimize them, if anything.
Oh, thanks, Pete. And you're also concerned about grooming, aren't you? And I know Carol shares a similar concern to yours about children being groomed online and believing the person that they're talking to is actually someone legitimate.
Here's the thing. I didn't realise until recently, we did a short film, and it was only through this short film that I actually got all the information, that they've got devices now where the person can talk. You know, you think you're talking to someone, but it's not just a visual thing. Their voice can change using a device, so they can be an elderly man, an elderly woman that can sound like a young boy or a young girl. Honestly, it's something I never thought could exist, and it exists. So not only when you've got a child talking online to somebody, and they're getting a photo of the other person, and they're talking to them on the phone, and they're like, well, they are only 12, they are only 13. They can easily be an elderly person using that device. It's beyond horrific when you see how easy access it is for people to be able to get in touch with our children. You know?
So the online harms bill is obviously targeting the biggest players. For something like that, which is probably an app, would the bill be able to solve that particular issue? Or?
Yes, absolutely. So anywhere online where children or adults can interact with each other, that's captured in scope. And for something like grooming that's illegal, the companies will need to think about what can they do to prevent that happening and think about things like the voice changes of kind of what's the risk associated with that and how could it be misused.
But is there an enforcement on those companies? Because it's, yes.
Serious enforcement. So I'll just so people know because the enforcements are what make the companies do what the bill asks them to do. It's criminal sanctions for named individuals within those platforms. And it's also when they breach the bill and they're held to account for that by the regulator, it's 10% fine of annual turnover.
What happens if the companies that we use, the companies in terms of the social media companies, they regulate themselves? What happens then?
When you join Meta, Facebook or Twitter, you click to agree to sign to their terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions, if you read them, don't allow bullying, don't allow racism, don't allow grooming, don't allow all the things that happen, they say. So what this bill is doing is via systems and processes and via a regulator and guaranteeing that they adhere to those terms and conditions. And as politicians, we have no power to direct Ofcom. We make the law, the law that we want Ofcom to carry out the risk assessments, to hold those online platforms to account with the law, but we have no power to direct. So it is actually designed so that politicians, as they come and go, whoever they are, do have no powers to interfere with Ofcom. So
could the online harms bill also put that in place, that we attack the fact that they need to be regulated by the independent body?
Yeah, it is. It's in there.
Good. Okay, great.
You see, I'm listening to all of this, and I do get passionate about this, and I get passionate, yes, because I've got children, but also because I know that there's millions upon millions of parents that are wanting something like this. And we've seen how powerful it is when people get behind something. We've seen how powerful movements can be when people all get together and make a movement happen, make something happen. Now, in this situation, we need everyone's support. We need to push this bill because it will make people listen. It will make people do something. It's beyond important to get something like this done.
Believe it or not, there are voices off who would rather this bill didn't happen. There are people who believe that there should be no regulation of the internet. And the more trusted voices like you, Anton, you, Pete, and everybody in this room can get behind the bill and talk about what the bill can deliver, the better.
Yeah, you've got my 100% support, honestly. Thank you.
Well, listen, I could see Carol almost like jumping off her stitching to agree with you. So Carol.
So I'm Carol Vorderman. I've been on the telly forever. And I've been a campaigner in this field. I'm an engineer, Cambridge graduate, STEM, maths and so on, technology. So back in the late 90s, I was very actively involved as an investigative reporter, and I had the only tabloid column introducing people to this new thing called the internet. So Piers Morgan was the editor of the Daily Mirror, forgive me, at that time, and I had this double page. And little Sarah Payne was murdered. And because of that, we had a lot of emails coming through from readers who were saying, oh, there's a new thing called chat rooms. So I started investigating this, and it was horrendous. So up until that point, online, a grown man, just as Pete's saying now, you know, it could be a grown man, let's say, as an example, who would go into a chat room, groom a child, no crime committed. He would arrange a hotel room, with the child, no crime committed. The child could go into the hotel room. We actually had a situation where the police were outside, still no crime committed, until a sexual assault took place. So then the virtual world became real as far as the judiciary were concerned. Now I see it 20 years on, that we're in a whole different world. But I see this happening again. And I see it particularly with the Metaverse, with virtual reality. And I'm going to say some things that you're not going to want to hear, but they are the truth. So Facebook, Meta, put into virtual reality, if you like, over $10 billion a year. They have now bought up so many companies. They own 75% of this space. You go in, you believe that you are in the room. So I could meet all sorts of different people in the room. And this is growing at a pace. As an example, lads aged 18 to 24, the beginning of last year, 17% have experienced it. A year on, 43%, right? And it is largely men who are in there. Just in normal rooms, 49% of women who've been in those, it's not particularly about children, have said they've been sexually harassed in the room. Now, this is an experience which affects your brain so massively because you honestly believe you are there. There is already an app that people can go into a bar, or they can take things from Instagram, they can take a photo of a woman, 3 photos is all it needs. She doesn't have to be naked, she's there, and the software will simulate that girl. So go a year ahead now, and I am deliberately telling you this because this is the world that's coming at us like a tsunami. A year from now, a lad can go into the pub, do this, go back with his mates, go into the room, and this person is there and they are having simulated sex with that person. Now, no sexual abuse in law at the moment has taken place because, do you see where I'm going here?
I think, so one of the things about this bill is we've got something called retained secondary powers, which we're going to have to get through. And what they do is the bill will pass on a certain day. We're quite sure that some of these online platforms, they will certainly develop the paths down Carol's talking about, and they will develop in terms of trying to change their terms and conditions so they can skirt through the bill. The bill retains something called secondary powers, which means we can move very quickly to update the bill using something called a statutory instrument. So this is a bill which will remain live, passing through the House of Commons forevermore. It means that anybody, not just me, who takes over from my job can say, right, this is happening, let's get the bill back to the House, let's pass the statutory instrument and let's go. So just going back to the bill, that's how we can deal with the issues Carol's raised. So I want to hear from, who wants to be the next person to speak?
I wasn't going to mention it, but I didn't think I would, but I was groomed as a teenager on Facebook way before I had a platform. And I was stalked later. And actually, it was pretty... Sorry, I'm like definitely still traumatised about it. But the Child Protective Services got involved in the end. Child Exploitation Online COPS got involved, and it was great. But something that struck me at the time that was horrific was and this was 2009, I'd say, was the sole response from the police, from my school, was get offline. Like, you just need to delete everything. And at the time, like, you're 15, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to delete my Facebook. Like, how will my friends talk to me? And, you know, I really didn't want to do that. And I ended up having, it was so embarrassing. Like, I had to give my passwords over to the police, or not the police, but to the COPS. And I had to have someone hang out with me at school to keep me safe. And it was like, it was so embarrassing, which it shouldn't have been, but you're 15, so you're just like, oh God. And everybody said just get offline, and I realised I probably could have done, and I didn't, and now for some reason I do it for like a full-time job, so it didn't scar me too much. But I think it's just not an option that we're told, or we have been told, like, if you don't like it, get offline. It's such a victim-blaming mentality, and I still feel like it, even as like a grown adult now, when I'm abused in a very different way online, and people say, well, if you don't like it, get off. And it's like, particularly for kids, that's not an option, and it's completely unrealistic.
So what we're doing, is with this bill, we're putting the protections in place that you need to live the life that you want to lead online. Yeah. And whether you're an influencer, or you're just someone who wants to talk to your mates, or hang out in your local community group, or which I looked at a community group last night and saw abuse on the community group just because someone was suggesting something. This bill is going to put in place the protection. So, you know, if someone doesn't like you, they would set up an account and they would harass you online, but they'd also set up 50 others, which would also target people who are friends and family of yours to make it look like that's going to be outlawed in the bill.
Following on from what you were just saying, I feel like we can't say anymore, like, not to be on social media. It's such a good place to be online because it breeds lots of creativity, like uniqueness. There's lots of representation. You see loads of different things. So it does have its positives and its benefits. So yeah, it's just not an option. And like me, I'm supposed to be on it for work, and sometimes I just hate it and I don't want to go on it at all.
Why?
And why because it's just, some people clearly just don't like me as a person, and that's fine. But
it's not fine, is it?
Like, it's not fine, but also no, it's not fine, but it just makes me feel like am I doing something wrong? Am I saying the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Am I being a good person online? And it's horrible to sit and think, am I doing the right thing? I went out to protest for Black Lives Matter when, at the point in time what you were just talking about earlier. And I was losing like 50,000 followers a day, and I was getting thousands of messages per day.
Losing 50,000 followers a day.
You're lying.
Yeah, like 50,000 a day. I think I went out for 4 days, and yeah, I lost 50,000 every single day that I went. And all I was doing, I wasn't actually like putting my opinion out there. I was only helping people. I was giving out masks and sanitizers and making sure people were safe if they wanted to protest. And that was such a bad time in my life because I was trying to do the right thing or what I felt was the right thing. And so many people were just like being racist towards us or just being horrendous. Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. And then it stopped me from speaking out about things I want to talk about, like being here. Like I find it hard to do things like this now because I'm like, oh, the backlash that I'm going to get and what people are going to say. And I've always been a very much outspoken person, but it's just, it gets on top of you when you've got millions of people just having bad things to say. And then you're like, maybe I should just shut up and post a picture of my outfit and carry on, you know, and make my money and not. But it is important to have things like that because for me, I'm 24, but I don't want younger people to have to go through it as well. And I want people to be able to enjoy going on social media and watching people's content. And
so what?
I understand what.
No, Tessa, go on.
I understand what Amber's saying in a way because you know I'm Tessa Sanderson and I've competed in 6 consecutive Olympic Games and won the gold medal. Yes, I know, for my age. And I won the gold medal in 1984. But since then, seeing what's happening, not just in the sporting arena, but what is happening to those guys, if you look at that directly, and people are doing the same thing, but even more, 38 years on, are still saying, you know, you're not doing this and we don't want you to compete here. But especially on the football field, if they go and score a goal in the World Cup, absolutely brilliant.
Anton
but if
knows
not,
that better than anybody.
then all the abuses come in and things like that. And mentally, one has to look at it. That's why I'm so glad about this bill. If that is getting to someone who's quite vulnerable and so on, that can lead to very, very traumatic things. And this is
relentless as well, and it's very easy for people to do it.
Precisely.
You know, when you were in school, you had certain hours to do it, but you had certain hours to do it. But now it's like, it's so easy to just quickly tap whatever you want and say the horrible things.
But a lot of these people, you see, who are doing this sort of like online things, I call them hidden bullies. They are nothing but hidden bullies, really, because, and also the companies, I think, is a lot to answer for, like somebody was saying. So they should be made accountable by saying, look, we need some ID for them, make sure that all this is done on there, make sure that it's monitored, even with Ofcom, you know, like we're saying, because it just needs to be done.
Can I just give you a reassurance on that? So anonymity is hard to do in the bill because there are whistleblowers and even, you know, Ukrainians and Afghanistan and other people who need anonymity online. But what we're doing is we are, in the bill, we're going to require the platforms to know the identity of who's registering with them and to verify them, verify that identity. Absolutely. And then when you sign up to Twitter, we're going to give you the tools to say, I only want, I mean, they don't have to. If they say to Twitter, no, I don't want to verify, I don't want to give you my identity, that's fine. We give the user the tools to say, I only want to interact with people who are verified, that Twitter could identify, and then they could take action against. So we're giving the tools to the people who use the platforms because we realise anonymity is not possible because there are people who actually use anonymity for good, but we want to give people the power to use the tools.
The thing is, kids' brains are really, really fragile, and I think a lot of the time they don't know how to take things like this, if that makes sense. And this, hopefully, because it will now become law, it will put, you know, an obligation on schools to really make sure that they're kind of taking action. Because when I remember, I did report a few things when I was at school and the teachers didn't do anything. That's not good enough. And again, like when I was in year 12 and I picked my A-levels, I did maths, further maths and history. You know, every single lesson I was laughed at, and there was a point where one of the boys said, she's just a skinny black kid. Wow. And
in the lesson?
In the lesson. And again, just to go back to, I think, the main aims of this like bill, with kids, there's a lot of things that I guess like parents can't really help with in that sense, because you can't stop them from going on social media, and you can't stop all these things. But I guess, again, if schools, because kids are at school quite a bit during the day, and, you know, for a while when they're very, very young. And I think if schools now have that obligation on them to really do things about, you know, bullying and grooming and harassment and all of these things, and especially online as well, it would really help.
I think it's worth pointing out, actually, that the current guidance from the Department of Education is that if an incident happens that is around online safety, then schools should be dealing with it. And you're right, though. What we've seen is that this isn't just about behaviour online. Unfortunately, this exists offline. There's racism offline, you know, sexism. And even when you look at, I also have a couple of hats. I'm on Twitter's Global Safety Advisory Board. When you look at the abuse that some of the football players faced, 99% of that wasn't anonymous. And the majority of the abuse was actually from the UK. So we've still got to look at actually attitudes and behaviours in society, as well as addressing the online part, because they're still going to exist, those behaviours.
Can I ask how the bill will change that? So, for instance, that footballers, or you, Amber, let's say you go out and protest about something else.
Yeah, well, so hopefully kind of your starting point will just be much better, because as Secretary of State said, the companies say that they don't allow the sorts of awful abuse that you get, but in practice they do, because either kind of it's too costly for them to do anything about it, or actually it drives engagement, so they don't really want to do too much. But under the bill, they'll be held to account, so Ofcom will be able to kind of go in and dig in and kind of what are they really doing, and if they're not putting those systems in place, they can find them. And it's not just abuse. I know there are also kind of big issues about body image online, and and Sharon, I think you've had some experiences of this as well, haven't you?
So I'm Sharon Gaffka, reality TV personality, if you want to call it. I'm also, so I was an ex-civil servant and a Young Women's Trust ambassador as well. So like my focus is mainly how young women are treated online. I'm sure Amber will probably agree with me that as a female contestant on Love Island, you're treated very differently to your male counterparts. You're ridiculed from not just your behaviour or on an edited show, you're ridiculed for your appearance and everything you do after. So, you know, since I left the show, I've been very open about my trolling. I'm from mixed heritage, so I'm half Asian, half European. The racial abuse that I've received is significantly higher to my white contestant counterparts. And if I speak about it, it's that I'm upset because nobody fancied me. I'm doing anything for clout, anything for my 5 minutes of fame. I was like, I don't get paid for this. I could sit on my Instagram page, post pretty pictures, make as much bank as physically possible and then dip. But I spend my time talking about all of these things for a reason. And, you know, like Amber said, she lost 50,000 followers a day. I find it hard to grow my engagement as much as my other fellow contestants because I'm talking about these things. And, you know, my season of the show was trialled as part of Instagram's new thing where you can filter certain words. So we were given early access to word filtering on social media before everyone else, and I just didn't think it worked. So, for example, because of one episode, I filtered the word fake from my thing. I still got it. It comes in different variations, and the apps, it's like a fake, like we are trying to do something, you know, we've put a little plaster on it, but they've actually not got into the seriousness of the issue. And I think where this bill is so important is that trolling's a learned behaviour, because they don't see people like, you know, reality TV people or people on shows like The Voice as people. So it's a learned behaviour that this is just somebody on the internet and somebody we interact with on TV, and they think they know everything about you.
Please take my assurances that a lot of what you've spoken about today is addressed in the bill. But we are very aware that as the stuff Carol's talked about that's happening down the line, and we know, you know, when this bill started its journey 5 years ago, TikTok didn't even exist. So we know the warp speed at which the internet moves. This bill is being put in a place where it will be able to address not just what's happening now, but issues as they arise in the future. So I just want to thank all of you for your time and your contributions today. Thank you.